whispers beneath the baobab. Unity is not a song we sing at summits, the old man whispered, his voice grainy like desert sand. It is a path we clear with blood, wisdom, and relentless hope. Beneath a sprawling baobab tree in northern Senegal, 5 figures sat on woven mats. The moon carved silver silhouettes around them. None of them were heads of state, but all carried the weight of a continent's future on their backs. There was Awa, a fiery young engineer from Nairobi; Youssef, a trade economist from Algeria; Papa Kofi, a retired Ghanaian military strategist; Lindau, a South African legal scholar; and finally Teek, the griot, custodian of oral histories, who had traveled village to village for 5 decades collecting stories, truths, betrayals, and dreams. They were not elected, but they were chosen by desperation. The message that changed everything. It began with a message. Not an official document, but a voice note circulated through a secure Pan-African messaging channel, apparently from an anonymous military insider in West Africa. They're planning to divide us again. Not with borders this time, but with resources, with loans, with media. We must act before the last drumbeat fades. Form a union, or perish divided. In less than 48 hours, it was downloaded over 2 million times. Its ripple reached students in Accra, mechanics in Mogadishu, miners in Katanga, and herdsmen in Niger. The idea was old, but the timing was new. The urgency had never been greater. What if Africa became one? A continent on fire. From the Sahel to the Horn, from the Cape to the Maghreb, Africa in 2030 was a continent caught in paradox. It was home to the world's youngest population, yet ruled largely by aging elites. It held 30% of the planet's mineral resources, yet remained economically tethered to former colonial powers. Infrastructure projects were rising, yet dependency on foreign contractors and debt grew even faster. And now, with the global superpowers reorienting their battlefields, from bombs to microchips, from oil to data, the continent had once again become a board for foreign chess. But something had changed. A new generation wasn't just waking up, it was rising. The proposal. It was Awa who first said the words no one dared to utter. We need a blueprint for the United States of Africa. Not slogans, not chants. A real plan. Institutions, policies, power shifts. We drafted, we tested, we circulated. The others were quiet. Papa Kofi finally broke the silence. You realize what this means? They will come for us. The old guards, the corporations, the intelligence agencies. Every system built to keep us apart will scream. Loudly. Yes, Awa replied, eyes steady. Let them scream. And so began the meeting beneath the baobab, the first of dozens across the continent. Secret gatherings in fishing villages, inside shipping containers converted to mobile labs, in the dusty corners of forgotten universities. The blueprint. They called it Ubuntu Pact 1.0. It outlined a common currency backed by a basket of African minerals, an integrated military force governed by a Pan-African civilian council, a unified visa-free passport for all citizens of the continent, a shared education curriculum rooted in African history, philosophy, and innovation, a sovereign African digital infrastructure free from Western or Chinese surveillance. But blueprints were only as strong as their believers. And belief, across a continent stitched with trauma and distrust, was fragile. Opposition and obstacles. News of the pact leaked. International media called it idealistic. Some labeled it dangerous. A Western diplomat was quoted anonymously. An integrated Africa would be difficult to influence. That's not necessarily in our strategic interest. Within days, 2 leading architects of the pact faced sudden arrests on corruption charges. One university was mysteriously burned, and a radio station in Malawi that aired interviews about the pact was shut down for licensing issues. Still, momentum grew. Celebrities, religious leaders, athletes, even former presidents began endorsing the idea. A viral song by a young Ivorian rapper titled One Flag topped charts in 15 countries. The turning point. The spark came from an unlikely place, the African Cup of Nations final. During the opening ceremony, teams from across the continent stood shoulder to shoulder, holding hands. Suddenly, the stadium lights dimmed. A projection lit up the sky. We are not 54. We are one. The crowd roared. Across Africa, screens flickered. And in the hearts of millions, the impossible no longer felt foolish. Blueprints under fire. The morning after the African Cup moment, the world felt split in two. One part buzzed with electric hope, the other seethed in high offices across Europe, the US, and parts of Asia. For those who benefited from the status quo, the idea of a united Africa was no longer amusing. It was dangerous. The African Union remained diplomatically cautious, but inside its walls, young aides passed the Ubuntu Pact around like Sami's literature. In coffee shops in Lagos and Dar es Salaam, students debated timelines. In diaspora communities, fundraisers were launched. Some pledged to build local apps. Others translated the pact into local languages. But enemies, seen and unseen, began to tighten their grip. The first attack was digital. An AI-powered botnet flooded African social platforms with misinformation, claims that the pact was a foreign conspiracy, that it aimed to impose one language, that it would erase ethnic identities. Some bots even mimicked voices of local leaders. Confusion spread faster than the truth. Then came the economic pressure. Donor agencies began pulling out of development deals. Aid for schools and health clinics mysteriously dried up. The IMF issued warnings. Currencies began to shake. Fuel prices surged. Old leaders were trotted out to call for patience with the existing order. Even within the movement, cracks began to show. Was the Ubuntu Pact moving too fast? Who would lead this new Africa? Would power merely shift from old dictators to young opportunists? Awa was unshaken, but Youssef was beginning to lose sleep. "I'm getting calls from officials I've never spoken to before," he told her one night. "Some are threatening. Some are seductive." "Power," Awa replied, "never begs without a knife behind its back." The fire was spreading, but so were the embers of sabotage. 1 week later, a blackout swept across several capitals. Officially, it was blamed on grid failures, but hackers knew better. Someone had targeted the communication networks, linking the Ubuntu Pact hubs. Teak, the griot, called an emergency circle under the baobab. "It is time," he said, "to move from whispering to thundering." Dangers ahead. Beneath the smoke of false promises and economic blackmail, betrayal brewed in silence. Youssef, once the most cautious voice in the circle, had not shown up for the last 2 meetings. Awa suspected something, but dismissed it as exhaustion. Until one evening, Papa Kofi received a coded message. "Watch the dove closest to your chest. Its feathers are selling secrets." Teak decoded it first. "It's Youssef." "Impossible," Awa argued. "He's risked too much." But risk makes strange bargains, and betrayal often comes wrapped in loyalty. The missing tablet. That night, Awa returned to their encrypted co-working space in Dakar, a humble compound tucked behind a mechanic's garage. Her hands trembled as she searched through the locked cabinet. One tablet was missing, the one containing the backup plans for Ubuntu Pact 2.0, a draft version that included names, locations, and even exit routes. She sat down slowly, as if the truth itself weighed 1,000 stones. He had it. Youssef had betrayed them. The phone call. 3 hours later, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She nearly ignored it, but instinct made her answer. "Awa," came Youssef's voice, soft, almost apologetic. "Before you hate me, just listen." She said nothing. I didn't want to do it, but they made it clear. My family, my brother in Tlemcen, they showed me what would happen. I chose the path of least blood. She swallowed hard. "So you chose obedience over revolution." "I chose survival. You think we're not all risking our lives." "I know, and maybe I'm weak. But this plan, it's too fast, Awa. Too bold. You don't see the size of the monster we're poking." A pause. "Don't trust the South African group. There's another leak." The line went dead, the fracture within. When she shared the call with the others, Lindio's face changed. "South Africa," she said quietly. "My own legal team." Teak looked at her. "Even gold may hide poison." It became clear. Youssef wasn't acting alone. There was a second saboteur. Within 48 hours, the Ubuntu Pact's encrypted communication hub in Lusaka was raided. 2 team members were detained. Files deleted. Their digital infrastructure, the platform that had begun translating the pact into Swahili, Hausa, Wolof, and Zulu, was destroyed. Papa Kofi stood in front of the remaining team. "This is no longer a draft. This is war." The unexpected ally. Then, just as the night felt its darkest, hope returned, in the form of an unlikely voice. A message arrived from a deep-channel source within the African Union. You are not alone. We have watched. We cannot officially endorse, but we will shield. One last summit. Nairobi. 3 days. Do not bring phones. Do not speak of this. Trust only the griot. Teak smiled. When silence sends signals, the ancestors are watching. Awa nodded. Let's finish what we started. The Summit of Shadows. The rain in Nairobi came like prophecy, heavy, uninvited, and cleansing. It drummed on the rusted rooftops of Kibera and blurred the neon glow of new skyscrapers, as though the sky itself sought to wash away the old Africa, clearing the stage for something unseen. Beneath the cloud-thick sky, 6 unmarked vehicles weaved through back alleys, away from the usual pomp of state visits and into the underbelly of a city too old to be fooled. The final summit was not held in a hotel, nor a government building. It took place in an abandoned theater once used for revolutionary plays during the Mau resistance, a fitting venue for what many now whispered could ignite the second liberation of Africa. Inside, candlelight flickered against graffiti-stained walls. The theater smelled of damp wood, dust, and memory. Rows of broken seats lined the back. But the stage had been cleared, swept clean, as if awaiting a performance. Only this time, the actors were real, and the stakes weren't scripted. Awa entered first, her hoodie damp, eyes unblinking. Teak followed, his fingers wrapped around a wooden staff older than most nations. Lindai wore silence like a shield, her lips thin, eyes scanning the room for lies. Papa Kofi, stoic as ever, limped with determination. 2 new faces emerged from the shadows, young, tense, but trusted. Members of the AU's secret reformist bloc. They gave no names. The room fell quiet. Teak took the center. The ancestors are listening. The great reveal. The summit began without speeches. They had no time for poetry. Maps were unrolled. USB drives smuggled through 6 borders were decrypted. The damage was tallied. The betrayals logged. And the path ahead, uncertain, perhaps even suicidal, was outlined. The South African leak was confirmed. But so too was an unexpected counterintelligence effort. A syndicate of African diaspora hackers calling themselves Black Signal had quietly been tracking every sabotage attempt. Using decommissioned satellites and repurposed European spyware, they had pieced together a digital map of the enemy's strategy. Their findings flashed onto the projector, a makeshift white sheet nailed to the wall. A multinational lobbying group, based in Geneva, had funneled funds to discredit the Ubuntu Pact in media outlets. A covert alliance between 2 African presidents, both in power for over 20 years, had offered intelligence to foreign agencies in exchange for regime survival. A mercenary firm with former ties to a now-defunct Western military contractor was training militias in Central Africa, allegedly to safeguard assets. What assets? Lindai asked, her voice like cold steel. The screen changed. Lithium, cobalt, rare earth minerals, Africa's new oil. The Nairobi Declaration. By midnight, the room had drawn lines in sand. Awa stood and addressed the group, her voice stripped of youth, aged by the weight of everything lost. We can no longer operate as a circle of visionaries. We must become a government in waiting. If they destroy our nations from above, we rebuild from beneath. City by city, region by region. This isn't about flags anymore. It's about futures. The Nairobi Declaration was born, not a public announcement, but a strategic plan encrypted and split into 5 parts, each entrusted to a different custodian. The fragments would only be reassembled when conditions aligned: civil unrest in 3 or more major capitals, open military defection in at least 1 region, and proof of economic sabotage tied to foreign actors. Until then, they would seed ideas, recruit minds, and survive. The farewell and the fire. Dawn approached. The rain had stopped. As they began to leave, Teak stopped beside Awa. "There's one truth I never told you," he said, voice brittle. She looked at him weary. "I was at Sankara's last rally. I heard the speech they later erased. He said, we must dare to invent the future, but also dare to be hunted for it." He handed her a worn pendant carved from baobab wood. "They will come. They always do. But when they arrive, let them find more than rebels. Let them find a nation being born. Awa nodded, her throat tight. Outside, the city stirred. Horns honked. Radios buzzed. No one knew what had just happened inside that broken theater. But from that moment on, history no longer belonged to textbooks. It belonged to the brave.